Hey, I'm Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy and host of the Armed and Ready podcast. Please come and check out this exciting episode we have for you. Hey, I'm Jason Wood. Welcome you to another episode of the Armed and Ready podcast. Today we have Army veteran and real estate agent Robert Mendeval. Robert, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Jason, for inviting me.
Yeah, so Robert and I go back, 7 or 8 years now? We've been working together, and wanted to share Robert's story with everybody here. We do a lot of real estate business. I'm doing the loans. He's doing the real estate in San Diego. We help a lot of veterans and active duty folks purchase and sell homes. But Robert was in the military, and ironically enough, you've got two dudes here working the San Diego real estate market that aren't from the Marine Corps or the Navy, which is out of place a little bit, because everybody here, if they served in the Marine Corps or the Navy, eventually a lot of them retire and come back here because it's such a great place to live. So we're helping a lot of those folks, maybe with a little different lens since we didn't get to cruise on boats.
Yeah, that's funny. When I talk to a lot of vets who I help, and primarily Navy, not so many Marine guys, but the Navy guys, and I always tell them the first time I was recruited by the Navy. But they wanted to put me on the submarine, and I did not want to go into a tin can.
Yeah. It's funny. We had a guest on the show a while back, and he was in subs. And interesting to learn about it, to be honest with you. I'd still never volunteer to work on a sub. Mm-hmm. But interesting stories. He's saying, if we had all hell break loose on Earth, the safest place in the world to be in a nuclear war would be in a submarine.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I was like, I never thought of that before. But yeah, talk about a bunker, right?
That's true. That's true.
Pretty insulated down there.
Yeah. At some point you have to surface. So
right. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story. So what compelled you to want to join the military as a young man? What was the motivation there?
In high school, at first when I went took my ASVAB scores, I scored very high. I think it was third or fourth. So that's when the Navy came out and they said, well, you qualify for high tech stuff. We're going to put you on a nuclear. And I just couldn't see myself doing it. So I backed away from that. But I was going to college after I graduated from high school. But I was kind of lost, didn't know what I really wanted to do. And I thought, well, what am I doing here? And just kind of moping around. So I decided to just try the military again. And this time it was the Army. Wanted something more of an engineering field.
Gotcha.
But I kind of got lured into artillery. And so I ended up becoming what they call a cannon fire direction specialist. And so I went in 82. I just turned 19. Went to basic training at Fort Sill.
Where's that?
That's in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
It was during the winter. Ooh. Never been on a plane before. Never saw snow because I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. And the only time we saw snow was when one of our neighbors came down from Flagstaff with a truckload of snow in the bed.
Oh, yeah.
And brought it for the kids to kind of play with it. And that was the only experience I had of snow until I went to Fort Sill. And then, that was, I still remember my boot camp, January 6th. And went from first time on an airplane, first time on a big plane, then getting into a little charter plane until I think I got to Oklahoma around 11 o'clock at night after the whole trip. And it was freezing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a jacket thick enough for me, and I was just freezing. And so here we go, boot camp. How they receive you and they process you. All of a sudden,
with kid gloves, right? I mean, it's so gentle and kind.
Yeah. Don't think, just do.
Right.
And the first snowfall, I remember getting so excited and waking up in the barracks, waking the other guys up, and they were cursing me out because a lot of these guys were from back east, and they'd seen snow. For me, it was like I felt like a kid in a candy store and waking everybody up, and I was excited to first time see it. And then later on that day, I hated it because we were shoveling snow out of the parking lot.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys had to run it and everything.
Oh, yeah. So, that's how when I got into the military, just because I felt lost, and then this was something to do, and I liked the travel aspect of it too, because I ended up doing some time in Germany.
Oh, so, right on.
Yeah.
How was that experience? That was a base I was always trying to get, a TBD to or something, and I never could.
Oh, Germany was great. I love Europe. and it was fun during that times during the '80s. So there was a lot of like rock bands coming out of Europe. You had U2 and the Police and a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then I was didn't have a girlfriend, so I was single in the military, which I was glad because it allowed me to do a lot of little tours. So I'd sign up to a lot of these tours with a chaplain, and every weekend I had something to do if I didn't have any duty. So it was a lot of fun. It was also kind of scary because it was also during the time of the nuclear missile crisis and stuff during all the politics behind it. Persian missile crew was stationed right next to where I was at. So there were a lot of protesters in Germany about having a military nuclear presence there in Germany.
Wow.
And being kind of a target during the Cold War stuff. So those guys would get assaulted a lot of times just walking down the streets because they had their patches
Oh wow.
and
Pretty tense situation then, huh?
oh yeah. It's during Reagan era, so we're having this again the Cold War. We'd go on marches. KGB would come by and take pictures of us, and they were always there. You always could tell. So it was kind of intimidating to watch those guys come around.
Oh, that's crazy. It's kind of out of a movie, sort of.
Yeah. I'll tell you what the weirdest thing was. There was a day where they had, I think it was like hands held across the world, where it had been organized where these nuclear protesters would simulate the damage a nuclear blast would do. So our barracks was surrounded by all these people, German nationals and protesters. And we had the Polizei kind of out there doing security, plus our military police. And at noon, and I forget the date that it occurred, but at noon, everybody on the street laid down flat on the street like if they were killed.
Whoa.
So it was really eerie to see thousands of people laying in the middle of the street for about 2 minutes, simulating what would happen if a nuclear blast occurred. So it was kind of freaky.
That is freaky.
Yeah.
Weird.
And really eerie to see that. I mean, one thing is seeing in a movie, but to actually witness it and for them to be so passionate about that. So.
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. So, obviously you guys are probably insulated a lot from the politics, but there was a lot going on with that whole, nuclear arms race and the Cold War and stuff. So, did you guys ever have like any interactions with Russia or anything over there since you're so close?
Well, like I mentioned, the KGB were always around. So every time we would do road marches or field exercises, we'd see those guys out there in the field taking pictures, and there was a presence all the time. And it was kind of weird because you don't know. I mean, they're taking pictures of you while you're marching or whatever, so they have a record of who you are and what time and place, and they just kept logs of that. And it was almost an everyday thing.
Dang.
Yeah. So
wow.
It's kind of weird. But
that is weird.
You get used to it after a while. You're just like,
Any cool, any favorite spots that you got to visit when you took little weekend trips?
Oh yeah. I used to go up and down the Rhine River. There were some places there, a lot of cities that do a lot of like bars. There was like this one area, almost like Greenwich Village, where it was just a street full of bars left and right. And it was fun to see different venues there, rock, jazz, blues, country western, all on these streets.
That's fun.
And everybody was having fun there, that's up on the Rhine River. And of course, just the architecture in the different cities there. So I did a lot of tours. But one of the trips I took was during the springtime up to the Austrian Alps. And,
cool.
It was another chaplain trip. And it was funny because we were supposed to go hiking up on these trails. And then we were going to stay overnight at this chalet up in the Alps. And the chaplain was very strict with us, saying, hey, make sure you stay on the trails. Don't get off the trails. And see these plaques there were like all these plaques on these trees on the trails. And there were memorial plaques of people who got off the trails. And most of them were American names.
Dang.
And so we were like, oh, okay, won't get off the trail. Well, the next morning, some friends of mine, we woke up late and we missed the morning group, and we were running behind from the chaplain. So we could see them down below us from this one trail from the chalet. And we were just kind of rushing. And we go, well, we better hurry up and get to them. And then one of the guys, well, let's take this shortcut right here.
Oh, no.
So it looked like a shortcut, like, oh, okay, let's try it. So it was myself and this other sergeant. And we started to go down this hill. It was really wet grass. So we kind of slid a little bit, and we slid to an edge of a cliff.
Ooh.
The grass was so wet, we couldn't climb back up. So we said, well, let's go ahead and try it. Let's just trek down. And so we were scaling this cliff with no equipment. It was just myself. He had a backpack. And there was times where I had to like position his foot down onto a ledge and what have you. And we were getting down slowly. And we came to this part of there was a ravine with probably about an 80-foot ice bridge. And like, again, this is spring, so the ice is melting. And we couldn't see any way passing that unless crossing that bridge. And I still remember that. Wasn't sure if it was going to support our weight or not. So we took his backpack, 45 pounds, whatever it was, and we threw it down. And it made it across the bridge. And said, well, it made it, so let's give it a shot. And so I went down first and made it without a problem, and encouraged my sergeant friend to come down. And he was screaming all the way down. And I caught him because, he was coming down pretty fast. But that was our only option. We really couldn't go back. This is before cell phones and all this stuff. So the guys would have to like try to find rescue crews and whoever they can get a hold of.
Yeah.
And if that bridge would have broken, we would have, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here because there was nothing but spiny rocks down on below.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we finally got down. It took about an hour, I think. And then
did you guys meet up with the rest of the group finally?
Yeah, we met up with the rest of the guys. And then it was weird. The whole time I was just thinking about getting down, how to get down. But when I finally got down and I looked at the cliff, it didn't look that intimidating, but all of a sudden I started shaking. I just started shaking like crazy. I couldn't stop. It just like hit me that, man, we could have died.
Yeah.
It was just the weirdest feeling.
Oh, dude, that's crazy. And exactly what you weren't supposed to do.
Exactly.
Get off the trail.
And then I thought, oh, would have been Mendeval on another plaque there.
Oh, man. So tell me about like your job in the military. What did you actually do? Did you like load artillery into like the cannons or whatever the firing device was, or what did you do?
No, I was calculated the gun data. So
okay.
As a cannon fire direction specialist, you're taking all the information from the forward observer. Like they spot the targets and then they call it in, the call for fire. But you know where they're at. And at the time, we were doing it all with paper. And,
wonder if anybody can even do it on paper anymore. What's the technology?
Yeah, I don't know anymore. They were introducing what they called the BCS, the ballistical computer system at the time. So everything we did was on paper, grid squares and measuring things and then calculating data with slide rules and with log tables. These books of log tables. So that's how we calculated all the gun data to create the information that the gun bunnies, we call them gun bunnies, needed in order to load the rounds and aim the barrels.
Gotcha.
And then we would walk around. They call it walking around, where the forward observer sees the impact and it says, okay, left 200 or whatever, to walk around to the target. But once we're on target, then they would do the call for fires. So then we would give all the data to the gun line. It's usually 6 guns. That's a battery. And then everybody has their information to shoot the rounds. Then when the BCS computer, when we were trained on that, when that came in, it made our job a lot easier.
I bet.
But a lot of times we could calculate the data from movement to hitting target under 90 seconds.
Oh, that's fast.
Very fast without the computer.
That's really fast.
We were really good. We were top in our agency. So, in fact, we were so good in our battalion that the Pentagon cited us as one of the best artillery units. Plus, they gave us permission to try what was called the Copperhead missile. Copperhead missile. I don't know if they still use it or not, but this is when the introduction of guided laser guiding systems
Okay.
were being introduced into the military. So there was like a big laser that the forward observers were carrying. They would paint the targets. And this Copperhead round was a very long round. It was probably about a good 4.5 feet, very tall.
Wow.
And it had wings on it. And it had in the nose sensors to pick up laser beam. And as long as the footprint, which it looked like a big egg, which they call the footprint, as long as the round was in that footprint, the forward observer could literally guide it to the target. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, they were considered tank killers, those rounds, because they can literally hit the tank and the turret wherever the forward observer pointed it to, and destroy a tank with one shot. Prior to that, to destroy a tank from artillery would take 12 to 25 rounds if you're lucky to hit it in the right spot.
Wow.
So they figured they'd save a lot of money by doing something like this.
Totally. Well, and that's how we were, from a military aspect, that's how we were geared back then, was to prepare against like big tank and that type of warfare, right? Which today it's totally different. It's all, air power. But yeah, we were really training towards all that stuff back then. That was the heavy focus.
Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting. I mean, when we were doing the tests, when we could see the rounds actually hit the impact, sometimes we'd switch positions. We'd play forward observer, and forward observers would take our roles to watch a turret from a tank actually go up 50 feet in the air from an explosion when these things hit.
Wow.
Like, wow, that no one survives that, but just amazing how effective it was when it actually struck the target.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I have no idea if they use it today. It's interesting, with Colin Powell just passing away this past Monday. I was reading a little bit about his biography, a short version of his biography in the Coffee or Die magazine, which is, I don't know if you've seen it, but Coffee or Die magazine, actually a guest of ours from one of the team members of Black Rifle Coffee, they have this news publication. So it's a magazine, online magazine, and they send reporters out and all this stuff and get, kind of the straight scoop on stuff. But they wrote a really nice write-up on him, and it was talking about, he wrote a paper, I think they call it like the Powell Doctrine now in the Pentagon, but essentially it kind of changed the U.S. focus on how we were building and preparing our military, and he referenced, exactly like the time that you were in during the Cold War, it was very heavily focused on like tank combat, taking out tanks, neutralizing tanks, enemy tanks, and, and our tanks obviously being better and training for that, to being more of the airstrike focus that it is today. So it's just interesting, kind of hearing your story and then having read that about Colin Powell, and it was his paper that really started to shift the change in the military.
Yeah, that sounds like it did. I mean, also back in the 80s, the introduction of the new Abrams tanks, and I don't know what model they're at now, but those guys are clocking 65 miles an hour on the field. I mean, that's extremely fast. Because the terrain there, and these guys are bouncing through that, and having a 90% accuracy in motion. So I don't know where the technology is today. It's obviously far better.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it's really good now. So you got done with your time in the Army, and what'd you do after that?
Yeah. After I got out of the military, I went into law enforcement. And
was that the plan? Like, did you know that's what you wanted to do, or did you get out and kind of question where you were headed?
Yeah. So originally I wanted to go back as an officer into the military. I went in enlisted. So I wanted to get some college behind me and finish that and to go back. But I wanted to go back to Germany. But during that time, I met a woman in Germany, and we decided, to see where we could take it. And she wanted to come to the United States. So I ended up going into law enforcement because I was available at the time. There's not much you can transition from artillery into civilian life.
Yeah.
So, there's always that part where they said, well, you could do this if you're a civilian, so we're giving you a skill. Well, the skill turned out to be for me was a map maker. And so didn't see too many map maker businesses out there.
No.
So anyway, I went into the military, or not, into law enforcement. I went to the deputy's sheriff's office with Maricopa County, and started in the jails. And so
that's an experience.
Yeah, that was an experience. And I started working pretty quickly into what they call the elevated groups, where I started working in the close custody and maximum security guys, and juvenile and psych. This was in a jail called Madison Street Jail in downtown Phoenix.
Okay.
And it was what they called at the time a third generation jail. It was one of the newer models.
Okay.
No bars. It was like pods. And so individuals were two to a cell and whatever the pod was. So, but for the closed custody guys, those guys are locked down 23 hours, come out 1 hour just for welfare and, shower and what have you. Those take a special type of training in order to work with those guys. Most of them are institutionalized. They don't care, they look at you sometimes with dead eyes, depending what they're in there. And they're all the high profile criminals for murder or something. They're known. They're in the news.
Yeah.
So it takes a certain type of character to work with those guys. And most of those officers were actually hand chosen by other officers because that's who they felt comfortable working with. And so I ended up going up on that what they call the sixth floor, working those areas pretty quick, and spent a lot of time up there. Spent about a good 4 years doing that.
Really?
Yeah. Then ended up becoming what they call an FTO, field training officer, training other officers into working corrections and what have you.
Any interesting encounters while you were on the sixth floor?
Oh my God, yeah. Yep. Did my fair share of suicide cut downs, cutting people down from suicide. I've had, bodily fluids thrown at me, and, dealt with a lot of little riots and what have you. So yeah, not a pretty job. A lot of times on the lower levels, it's kind of like you feel like an overpaid babysitter, because a lot of times the inmates will start complaining about little things like, how come his cake is bigger than mine and got more Kool-Aid than I got? Really petty stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you kidding me? You're a grown man worried about, someone's chocolate cake is a little bit bigger than yours.
Right.
petty stuff. But, but on the sixth floor, it's not like that. It's a different animal. These guys, they mean business.
Yeah.
I had 2 attempted shanks towards me.
Ooh.
One on a top tier guy. He had they like to hoard stuff, magazines and toilet paper and things like that. So this guy had hoarded quite a bit of magazines and books. So I was cleaning out, telling him to get rid of all this stuff. And while I was pulling stuff out of there, I was on the top tier, so I was up on the walkway. And out the corner of my left eye, I see some object coming towards me. It's him. I stepped back a little bit and just kind of did a crescent kick to him and knocked the shank out of his hand, and he kind of hit the rail. And I just looked at him and I said, "What the hell are you doing?" And just get back in your cell. Closed it up, and that was the end of the situation.
Jeez.
And that, and then again, I went back into the tower. And then it just started shaking my hand, like, okay, here was another instance.
Yeah, the adrenaline finally kicked in.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's scary. Anyone try and break out?
Oh, yeah. That's a funny story. So we're on the 6th floor, corner cell, and doing a walk. We had to do these welfare walks every 30 minutes. And so a buddy of mine, he did his walk, and I was operating the doors at the time in the tower. He says, "You got to come and see this." I go, "What?" He goes, "No, just got to come and see this." So we had one of our partners take over on the controls. So I go with him into the cell he was referring to. And all we could see is some legs sticking out of the ceiling and the guy screaming for help. He's saying, "It's hot up here. It's hot up here." And we're laughing because he's stuck. He's stuck in all the pipe work.
Oh, geez.
And I guess he hit the hot water lines.
Ooh.
and he was stuck. So we had to pull him out. But it just looked like two little legs dangling. It was the funniest thing. We were cracking up. You
Oh, I
know,
bet that was hilarious.
it was hilarious. That was the only thing that these jails are. It's hard to escape. You pretty much have to go through like maybe like the warehouse doors and things. You can't, not from the cells, not the way they're designed. It's just steel and brick.
Yeah, there's no escape from Alcatraz happening
No, and
here.
even when yeah, exactly, and so that's why he ended up getting stuck in the tubings, and it was hilarious. And he had these burn marks on his arms from the hot water.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So,
Oh my gosh.
so that, but there are a lot of stories that I can actually tell from that. You know, another story where this guy who was supposed to take some sedative from a nurse and didn't want to do it, grabbed the syringe, went to stab her with it, and I had to take him down.
Jeez.
And I was working with a new guy I hadn't worked with, and he literally froze. He was like a statue. Didn't know what to do. He was just frozen while I was taking this guy down and wrestling but so that was weird. Never worked with him again.
Yeah, well, for the medical staff, that's got to be like really freaky.
Oh yeah.
Have one of these guys come at you, knowing the severity of like the crimes and stuff they've done. So these guys are pretty nuts.
Oh yeah. This guy happened to be a former attorney.
Really?
And he was in there for I think he was in there for contempt. And but while he was in there, I guess he had these issues going on, and he was paranoid. He thought that syringe was full of some kind of poison. That's what was coming out of his mouth. It was just a sedative, but still, he grabbed it and he went into a stab motion and had to take him down.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's crazy. So how long did you do the law enforcement bit for?
I did that for 4 years.
Okay.
And then at that time, I started teaching myself, or actually went back to school and started learning computers and started learning how to program and got into software programming.
Oh, cool.
So after 4 years, I got an opportunity to work with this computer company and ended up learning how to program software for mental health, or actually physical health systems, like billing systems.
Oh, okay.
Did that for a while. Did that for like 3 years, I think, in Phoenix. Actually became a partner in the business. So we grew that. Actually, I'm sorry, 5 years. Did that for 5 years. And then sold off my portion and came over here to San Diego. My wife wanted to come to San Diego for, she was from Germany. Phoenix was not cutting it for her. It wasn't, Phoenix is different today than it was back then.
Oh, I'm sure.
So and she wanted to be by the ocean. So, all right. So I came down here as a programmer from this New York company, and they started writing billing software for state systems for like the county of San Diego and the state of California. So that's what we did. And I ran a software team here because it was just two guys, just myself and this other guy. And then we formed, started hiring some more programmers and formed an office. And so then I started teaching the guys and we were supervising. And so I was supporting California, up and down the county. So I was San Diego County, Orange County, Imperial, Sacramento. I was all over the place.
You must have been busy because there's no shortage of need in that field.
No, yeah, it was fun, and I had a great time, and that's what I did. And then after my stint with that company, I got hired on with the United Behavioral Health and started running the mental health business here with for San Diego County. They started outsourcing all their work, so I put in I don't know how many systems with a lot of these mental health providers throughout the county.
Yeah.
I established or helped establish the suicide hotline, which today is called the Access and Crisis Line.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yep. Put in those systems. Put in the suicide phone, which is at Coronado Bridge. I hooked up all that system to our headquarters, and so kind of played a big part in that.
Yeah. Well, that's really a good thing.
Yeah, I even talked a guy off a bridge.
Did you really?
Yeah, so my office was the corner office in Mission Valley. I don't know if you've seen those two glass tower buildings
Yeah.
by Dave and Buster's.
Uh-huh.
We were in the West Tower, and I had visibility to. There's a bridge between Camino del Rio North and Camino del Rio South that goes across the 8.
Yep.
So I had a buddy of mine who called me and said, "Robert, check out the guy that's on the bridge." And I had a direct line of sight. And he said, "I think the guy's going to jump." So I was watching him for a little bit, and then he called his supervisor who came over to my office, and we were watching this guy. And I said, "Well, let's just go down there." Because we had called the police, but they hadn't shown up. And an hour had already passed. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so we were kind of like, well, let's just go see what's going on. So I went
Hour.
down there.
That's a long time, man.
Yep. I went down there with her. And I had already had experience from my law enforcement back in Maricopa County, dealing with psych and juvie and, again, close custody. So I had the training already. And so we went down there, and I just started talking to him, shook his hand. While I was shaking his hand, I pulled him away from the bridge, and we were having a conversation. And he had just been released from the Rosecrans facility, which in San Diego County, that's the county mental health hospital. It's over there off of Rosecrans and I think Hancock Street. So he had just been released. He had a bag full of all his personal belongings. He was clean cut and everything, and he was just very upset. He said, "All I want to do is find work so I can take care of myself, and nobody will hire me. So what's the point, So we were having this conversation.
Sad.
It was sad. It was real sad. And then finally, San Diego PD shows up, and after we, taking care of the situation, and we just asked him to take him back to the hospital.
Wow.
So,
oh, poor guy.
Yeah, it was really sad to see that, especially a person you could tell he was really trying, but didn't know where else to go. So,
gosh, good thing you were there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now you're doing real estate, and how did you get from kind of that IT healthcare world into real estate?
So I always had in the back of my mind, if I was going to do kind of like a second type of income, what would be a good income to do? And I thought, well, sounded like real estate was happening, because I heard a lot of people back around 2006, people were buying homes. You heard about agents making all this kind of money. And I thought, well, if I'm going to spend time on a second business, might as well get a license and see what I can do with it. So around 2008, I went ahead and got my license. Didn't know anything. I had my job, so I wasn't really like too into it. But I started learning more and more about it. In 2010, I got laid off just during the big recession.
Oh.
And so the only position I had available was to move to Minnesota and take up an IT position over there. Well, I had my son here, and at the time, this is, I had like custody things going on there. So I was not in a position to leave San Diego, and no one was hiring here. So I thought, well, I got this real estate license. Let me see what I can do with it. And so I really started learning around 2008, or actually 2010, at the worst time. That's when, people were losing their homes, and
wasn't an easy time to be in real estate. That's for sure.
I didn't know what a short sale was. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I got my feet wet, literally doing short sales and foreclosures. Those are the first things I started doing. And it was tough. I started working with investors there too. And investors were buying up a lot of properties. So I was writing a lot of offers with two investors that I kind of befriended from the gym. And that kind of got me going.
Yeah.
And
that's a good stepping stone right there.
Yeah. Some of those guys, they're no longer here. They took off to like other areas where the money was better. But that's where I got my feet wet, and then I kind of liked it. So I saw the potential there. I wasn't really strong on the marketing aspect, so I wasn't really getting a lot of sales after. It was like a hot period, and then it kind of died down. I didn't know how to build a business from there. And then I started working again for an engineering firm in IT, for a company called ABB. did that engineering stint for a while, which was fun, working the ports, all those containers that are sitting out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to have what they call those port cards. They call twig cards, where you can get on there. So I was in that business. We were reading the container numbers from the shipping containers and actually doing the inventory. It's sort of like a big FedEx type of system.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it was fun. It was interesting. I love working with those Swedish guys. They were fun. And but then I got laid off on that, and I said, you know what? Let me do this real estate thing full time. So once I made the commitment to move over from removing my IT hat, just being a real estate agent, I've had a blast since.
Yeah. No, and you've done really well at it. I mean, if there's one thing I know about you, it's you're always a student of the game and always learning and trying to implement systems and get better and grow. And I think that's a testament to your success too. Is always being a student of the things that you are a practitioner of. And you know, we've done quite a few transactions together, and always have the most high remarks, you know, from the clients about you and stuff. So you've been doing real estate full time now for a little over a decade then, right?
Yeah, 13 years. So it's fun. And like you're right. I'm constantly learning. Market is shifting here and there a little bit, but I'm just always trying to see what I can do for my clients. And I feel if you're going to be in this business, know everything about it. So I'm started doing commercial last year, learning more about the commercial space and seeing some of its challenges. Started doing property management, so adding those books of business to my my overall business.
Yeah.
Last November, I started forming a team, and we're constantly training and learning all new marketing principles and everything else to try to, stay with leads and lead gen and have a constant flow of business.
Right.
But then also see what new changes are occurring in the law and staying on top of that. We're constantly learning. And I teach these guys Monday through Friday from, we spend about a good hour from 9 to 10 just practicing and learning new techniques and really honing our skills so that, they're well prepared and can address anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there like, when you decided to finally take off that engineer hat and dive into it full time and got going with it, was there like an aha moment for you where you're like, okay, now it clicks? Or, was there any moment that kind of helped you kind of get over the hump of like, okay, now I know how to do this?
Well, I was failing because my failure was more from a commitment level. Had one leg still in IT and the other one dabbling in real estate.
Gotcha.
So you can't do that. You have to be fully committed in one way or another. You either have to stay with IT or make this full commitment into the real estate.
Right.
So that was kind of the aha in a sense, where I said, okay, I am no longer an IT professional. I'm a real estate agent. And I'm going to just involve myself in real estate and learn everything about it. So once I started doing that, having that level of commitment, not having a safety net, so to speak, and going back to IT, and I started really taking off from that point. Started learning more about it, started learning how to market, started learning how to lead gen, getting better at transactions and solving problems that became more complicated. That kind of stuff, I took my analytical skills and all that and brought it into real estate, and it's helped me in that area. But I had to make that first step, which was the commitment.
Yeah.
And I strive at trying to be a better professional. There's a lot of agents out there that I call are hobbyists. They do it here and there, or they don't question why something is on a contract, like why they check this box or whatever, because somebody else told me to do this. And in the beginning, that's how I was, because I didn't know.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm shown by another experienced agent, this is what you do. And sometimes you don't get a training over it. You're just like, that's what I do, so you do it. It's that old, my grandmother did it, so I do it the same way, and etc.
Yep.
But I started going to other classes, listening to attorneys, and find out, well, you can get in trouble if you do this, try this, do it this way. So now we're kind of just want to be a professional real estate agent.
Yeah.
In every aspect, knowing those contracts like the back of my hand, and knowing how to advise a client, and building negotiation skills, all those things that I think are important and relative to this business, and 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 really have them have a better experience. So it's been all about that. What kind of experience can these people walk away with when they're working with me?
Right. Well, and I hear in my business too, much like yours, you hear these stories all the time of people who had just a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to many real estate agents who their reason for getting into real estate is when they bought their first house, the experience was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I can do better than that guy or that gal did for me.
Right.
And that's the motivation for a lot of these people. But that commitment to it full time and being, both feet in instead of, straddling something or other really is a difference maker. And I'm sure you see this too, but with like the hobbyist or the part-time person who has a full-time job, Monday through Friday, and then they kind of do some real estate in the cracks of their time. Right. And those seem to be, at least on the lending side, those seems to be the harder transactions to get through, because we're missing that experience on half the transaction, right? Or the accessibility or, the know-how. So yeah, that just jumping in all together, and that commitment is a big deal. And I think you kind of touched on it too, which is, that the processes, right? Mm-hmm. And how that helps you. And I think for, anybody who's listening or watching, it's kind of a glammed up field, as we see on TV. You got HGTV and $1 Million Listing and all this stuff, right? And it just looks so glamorous,
right,
and so easy. Everyone's making gazillions of dollars selling real estate, and it's a slam dunk. Just get your license, and everyone's going to use you, right? And couldn't be further from the truth. Actually, it's a lot of work, and it's tireless, and it's 7 days a week, and you're not only required to go find the business, but then you got to keep it. Then you got to make sure the process and the experience is good, and then you got to start all over again,
right,
and do it again. And that's I think a big shock factor for people who want to jump into real estate or even into lending, is those two things are very similar, right? And you're always starting back over after the next one, right? And you got to figure out how to develop your strategy and procure, the next lead, and convert that lead into, being a home buyer or a home seller.
Right. And you're always trying to, like, at least with me, I'm trying to make sure they have a good experience, so they do tell a friend or a family member and create that referral. And that extends your reputation.
Totally.
So I don't see, I know you hear about Zillow and Open Door, all these iBuyer type of systems where, let's make it easy. Let's get the agent out of the picture and just use our system. You can sell the house and we can take care of a lot of this stuff. But this business is such a relationship business that I don't see how far those folks can go. And it's not like the fees are they're actually more expensive than working with an agent for the most part. But you hear like Zillow, right? They're not buying any more homes for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, I mean, from the Inman report that I read was that they're saying it's a lumber issue or construction cost issues. They're not getting contractors to renovate their homes fast enough. I don't know how much truth to that is, but I do know that the folks that have had those experiences with those type of, the Zillow offers and Open Doors, they're highly rated. I mean, there's no relationship there. It's you're a number. Mm-hmm. This is, we're scaling this type of business and
Well, it's a really interesting topic you bring on with the iBuyer stuff, because I've been thinking about that a lot too. And just kind of replaying recent transactions that I'm in or have been in, mm-hmm. and none of them are the same. You have a buyer and seller and a property. That's probably the only continuity between each of these, right? But there's so many little components to every single transaction that makes it different. There's title things, there's repair related things, there's personalities, emotion. I mean, there's all these third parties we have to involve. I mean, a real estate transaction, there's a bunch of companies. It's not just a lender and a realtor, right? There's a title companies, insurance companies, escrow companies, appraisers, home inspectors, pest inspectors, HVAC. Like there's an army of people that procure this. So it makes sense that, kind of the click online way of buying or selling a home could end up being quite the disaster, because you have so many variables that can't be accounted for even with the best technology and addressed in such a way that the experience is still good, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there might have some systems and processes, and I'm sure that they have those in place, but it really kind of bodes to the fact, there's a lot to be said for that relationship piece and that client experience, right? I mean, no one wants to go through a home buying or home selling experience and then curse the fact that they ever got into real estate ever, and the sad part is a lot of the experiences that people receive, because we're so programmed to go online for everything, is just that, right? It's an awful experience. And they don't want to buy a house again. They don't want to sell a house again. That was miserable. Oh, I remember when I got that loan. Oh my gosh, it was horrible.
Right.
That's what they remember. And so, yeah, I think the new realtor, the new lender, I think really the focus in competition, because now the iBuyer situation and the online lenders for us, that's the competition, right? Because we get sucked into the TV advertisement that's like, ooh, click here. Oh, I'll buy your house for cash right now.
Right.
And, the easy button type of stuff really is for us, as a professionals in the industry, is to create our brand and position ourselves in such a way that we do have a value to people who are looking for value out of their transaction, right? There's always going to be the person who's like, I don't care about any of that stuff. Just give me the cheapest, quickest, fastest, and that's all I want. And that's fine. That's why those things exist for those people. But I would say probably the masses would prefer to have a good experience, someone that knows what they're doing. And that all really is going to begin, I think, over the next 4 or 5 years with your ability to create a presence, create a social media presence where people can see you and they can get to know you and they can understand your experience and your knowledge and how you work and your hobbies and your pastimes and your family. And, by the time they're ready, you're the person that they think of because you've been in front of them and sharing with them your life and who you are and why you do what you do, why they should work with you.
Right. No, you're absolutely right with that. And I'm trying to create a bigger social presence by recording a lot of stuff that I do and sharing the news, sharing the information, just being there as a service and just a resource, and taking that approach works pretty well. But the other thing with the iBuyer systems that you won't get, I'll give you an example. I'm in a transaction right now. It's kind of problematic, but when how these problems pop up and sometimes, okay, underwriting says you need this, right?
Right.
I'll give you an example. So we had termite work that was called out from the appraiser, but since we already had it on the report, appraiser says, okay, just show us the corrections and I'll just mark it off. Well, in this particular one, there was also some paint chips that were an issue on the home. That was identified on the report of those areas, but what the termite guy said, well, the wood is fine and we don't handle paint chips. So, that's got to be taken care of with someone else.
Sure.
Well, now that I know that this is another item that has to be addressed before we can get the condition cleared, someone's got to do it. Couldn't find anybody to do it, right? Couldn't find a handyman available, contractor available. We're getting ready to close, and we're in this position that could stop the whole closure or extend it or do whatever. And so instead of waiting and finding, I just was there and just started scraping the paint myself and took care of the whole issue on my own. I got my license, my workman's comp, and all that other stuff. So
Yeah.
had the permission from the seller. Buyer didn't even know I was doing this. Went ahead and took care of it, and we got the condition clear. Now we moved towards closing. I don't see how any of those like iBuyer systems or corporate would deal with something like that.
Yeah.
It'd be like, well, sorry,
Well, and that might be part of the issue at hand too with like Zillow's model. Is you run into issues with the property where the lender says, hey, that's something that has to be taken care of before we wrap this up. And they're going, oh, I got to find somebody, and finding people is in short supply. And the people that are available are doing work for the guys like you who they do a lot of business with, know, like, and trust, right? That's who the handyman's going to do work for,
right?
As a priority. And they get to the Zillow request eventually. But yeah, I can see that as a big issue. The other thing that I was thinking about with this whole iBuyer thing was, buying a home or selling a home is much different than like, going on Amazon and buying a TV or,
right.
Or buying a tablet, right? I mean, when you're looking at those kinds of things, if you're analytical like we are, you're probably lining up like, ooh, how many pixels and what are all the features? And okay, this is the size I want. Okay, these are both close to my butt. And like, you're just analyzing it down to the nth number, right?
Right.
And it's really a very logical decision when you're making that sort of purchase, right? And I feel like the iBuyer and the online lender and all that stuff tries to make this that type of transaction.
Right.
But the reality is, when you're dealing with your home, it's emotional. It's an emotional transaction. There's a lot of emotion tied to it. It's someone's home where they raise their kids, or it's going to be somebody's home where they're going to plant roots and raise their kids. And it's got to be the right place. And it's stressful. Moving is stressful. Buying a home is not a stress-free experience, right? So there's a lot of emotion tied to this. As much as the media may not share that with us, they share the end, like running up and giving a big hug when the transaction's complete. But it's the during and before that is the emotional struggle, right?
Right.
And it's hard. And so you don't get that when you click online. The support that you need from the professionals that can help guide you through that, give you the advice. No, you shouldn't buy it with that type of mortgage. You should really look at this type of instrument instead. Like to have that experience and hold your hand and get you through those stressful moments. It doesn't exist on those sides, even though there's people on the other side. It's a call center and they're, low level of experience and no advice or, so it's a totally different dynamic. And I think that gets left out a lot is the emotional piece of this.
Oh, I agree. Plus those guys are answering to investors. So right. they have to show profit on the model. Otherwise, why even do it, right? So it's not emotional for them. It's just very aesthetic. And when you're working with an agent, I mean, it is emotional. Like if an agent cares, they're going to care about the entire deal. It's not the person, who they've married up as far as a lender, who they're working with title, who they're working with escrow. It's because they want a good experience for overall. They want the transaction to be as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
And there's so much involvement, as you mentioned. There's a lot of emotion. People are letting go of a house that they've probably been there 30 years, and maybe downsizing and memories. Everything's being sold when they sell that house. Now you got a new person coming in there building memories. So you want them to have a good experience from day one. So yeah, I don't see how you can do that without a good caring agent behind your back, helping you, advising you, giving you the right directions, because most people don't. They buy a house once, twice in their life for the average, and that's it.
Yeah.
A lot of them they don't know.
Yeah. No, they don't. And there's a lot of logistics behind that. And there's a lot of advice coming at you,
right,
when you're the seller or the buyer, right? You got mom and dad telling you stuff. You got your friend at work. You got this thing you read on Google, another thing you saw on social media. So you've got all this stuff coming in as input to you that you're trying to decipher, which is ultimately going to help you make your decisions along the way, right?
Exactly.
And some of it may be good, some of it may not be, but how do you filter that, right? How do you even know, right? How do you know if what dad's telling you is really the right advice, right?
Right.
And not to discredit dad or the social media post or whatever, but are they doing it every day? Are they involved in it? Do they see this inside and out all the time? Probably not, in a lot of those instances. So it makes more sense. And I tell my clients this all the time. It's all about the team who you assemble, right? It's all about your team. So your real estate agent, your lender, those are two real critical pieces, right? Financial advisor might be another good one.
Absolutely.
Maybe your accountant, right? These are people that deal with this stuff day in and day out, 40 to 100 hours a week, right? They're inundated with this. So their at bats with all this stuff is in just pure numbers, way more than, what dad or aunt or that article on Google may have shown you, right? They're getting in the batter's box multiple times a day, swinging the bat, they just got more practice at it than everyone else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's a testament to how you take care of your people too, is having that experience that is good for your clients, right? Which is why they refer and they come back. And, that's the differentiator between this whole iBuyer and e-lender type of thing versus dealing with, local professional who's in it both feet full time, and cares. Like, I think we all, to an extent, wear our heart on our sleeve for, what we do in our business.
Oh, absolutely. And a testament to you as well, because we did that one deal in Campbell. I didn't even know we had a problem with that driveway, where that was a condition that needed to be done, and you took care of it and just let me know what you did. And I'm like, wow, okay, who does that? Not a lot of lenders will do something like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it speaks to you because you're very caring. I mean, I know everybody that I've sent you, they speak highly of you, and always had a good experience. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, right? That's the goal is to take care of people the way we want them taken care of, and serving that veteran community, right? I feel like, in one sense, we have a little bit of a leg up compared to the competition because we served, right? So we understand some of what they're going through from an emotional from a logistical standpoint, the move and the orders and waiting on orders, or, all that stuff, we have personal experience with, but there's still that part of like the military person who has that wall up, right? Because there's so much marketed and geared towards the military person, use this insurance company, use this bank, military, and, buy this car from this lot with the special military financing right outside the base, right? Like, there's so much of that stuff, or open a free checking account, that I feel like, we have our guard up to that kind of thing, right? Because it's not all honest, it's not always for the right reason. They just want more business, and they're just going to get you. That's their gotcha thing, right? And how they cater to us. So, and that's, I know you and we've talked about this, but how we, really cater to that client because we understand that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And understand how to make sure that they don't have that experience of like they were had.
Yeah. Cause you mentioned a good point. Cause I remember when I was in the military, a lot of the shops that were close to the bases were like these rent to own places. Because the military, the pay has never been all that great. So, you run into these, I want brand new wheels. Well, I can't afford the wheels. You can rent to own these wheels, or rent to own a stereo, rent to own a furniture. And when you find out how much interest you're paying on that stuff and getting really sub-quality stuff, but that's what you can afford in military.
Yeah.
And you get hit, like you mentioned, all the time from different vendors. They're saying, hey, military discount, military this. But when it comes down to it, like, I've been burned many times, and I'm sure a lot of other military personnel have been burned by some of those type of vendors. But when it comes down to home buying, it's like, no, man, this is your house. I'm going to do the best I can to find you the right one that you can afford. I got a great guy that you can work with, and he knows his stuff, and we're going to take care of you. We've been there. We're going to take care of you. And it's kind of like a brotherhood in a sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a lot easier, a lot better transaction experience, everything. And it just feels great helping another fellow veteran.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, not everybody can do that job.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. What do you see as we kind of wrap up here in real estate? So we're in the San Diego market. It's, we're in a post-COVID environment-ish, I guess. I don't know if
Right.
it's ever going to be post-post, but we're in a post-ish COVID environment. So where do you see the market going? And we're kind of coming out of the extreme craziness where there's like 50 people trying to buy every house. So that has, calmed a little bit, but what's your forecast? Where do you think we're headed with San Diego? And granted, we have a huge military presence here that's never going away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you forecast coming up in the next year or so in real estate here?
Well, I think the market's still going to be strong. We still have a inventory shortage. I was just doing the numbers on Monday, and we're starting to see a little bit more inventory from folks who I guess are getting more comfortable putting their homes on the market because people are vaccinated. I think that was a big buffer and reason why May was such a hot month.
Yeah.
And July was also pretty good as well. But I mean, we dipped down to 735 back in May as our medium price, and then in July it jumped to 750, and then it dipped again to 740. Right now it's at 750 as far as a median. More homes are on the market. The percentages have gone up. The inventory went up by 0.2 and 0.3 as far as months of inventory. So now most areas have at least 1 month of supply.
What's a typical like normal environment? How many months of inventory?
So a balanced market is considered 6 months.
And we're down to 1.
We're down to 1.
Okay.
We've been in the low numbers for about 10 years now, ever since the burst of the bubble and what have you, right? But we haven't climbed out of it. So I think we're still at about a 10-year inventory shortage, from what I'm hearing. Permits kind of get issued and then they stop getting issued, and you're seeing a lot of multifamily developments coming up and not a whole lot of single family.
Right.
So the resale market is still hot for that because you still have the old homes, and that's why we have a lot of investors flipping homes, and that's where people are finding the single family homes more often than in the new home space. But I do feel, just looking at the numbers, that it's going to be a seller's market for I think another 2 to 3 years. It's still pretty strong. I haven't seen anything pop up in 2 months in the past 5 years of inventory, and I monitor this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And so as far as the equity, I mean, I just released some information across the board in the United States. We have a 17.5% equity increase this year alone.
That's strong.
Strong. 20.5% is in California alone. And I think
Idaho was 30 point something.
Yeah,
It was insane.
Yeah,
I saw your post. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of tells you that where the values are at, and people own their homes are doing great. Now I'm sure the refi market was doing pretty good there and slowed down a little bit, but I think what's going to keep prices stable are the interest rates. So if interest rates start to climb, I think you're going to see prices just kind of like drop a little bit, but they're not going to fall flat.
Yeah. I think that's the big scare. Everyone's like, I'm waiting for the bubble to burst.
Yeah. There's no bubble here to burst.
There's no bubble.
There's no predatory lending practices. There's no more of that, stated income stuff that was sliding under the table and what have you. So it's more regulated, and that was a good thing for the government to do. But we still have a housing shortage, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they do need to increase salaries. I see some of that activity going on because the affordability I think that's the bigger problem, is where's the affordability index? And that's going to kind of hurt the market. And that's where you're seeing a lot of people still renting, but most renters are being hammered with 7 to 14% rent increases, and
then you have just the inflationary increases that we've been starting to experience now with goods and services in short supply.
Absolutely. So if you're in a house, I think if you just got one, stay in it for several years. If you're renting, go get one, because you're just losing money every single day. You're going to lose more money as rents increase. That doesn't change the shortage.
Yeah.
So
and you have this opportunity. I mean, I read an article just the other day. and Goldman Sachs was giving their next year forecast, and they were forecasting nationwide like a 22% rate of appreciation. So it goes right along with what you're seeing as well, is that we're in it for another strong couple of years, most likely, with appreciation. So, what that says to the consumer who's still renting or on the fence because they think a bubble's going to burst or they think home prices are going to dip, what that says is that line of thinking is not stable, because you take a home that's median home price of $750 in San Diego County and it goes up 16-17% in appreciation in 1 year, and then another year, and then another year, right? Like those dollars, I mean, when you convert that percentage into dollars, those dollars start building up much faster than the average Joe can save from their paycheck, right?
Right.
So it's growing at such a rapid rate that you can't play catch up unless you like win megabucks or something, right?
Right.
So you're not going to be able to play catch up, and the only way to be at that level of wealth growth is to get in, right? At whatever level you can get in, right? I mean, and I think sometimes TV has us a little jaded too, right? Because we see like Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they're doing these homes that look beautiful in, West Texas, for, $100,000 or 130 grand. And then you come out here and you're like, well, I want a house that looks like that, but I want it here in San Diego. And like, oh yeah, no problem. That's $1 million plus, right? But it's, sometimes it's kind of like, let's leave TV to TV and let's look at like what you can get into now. And you can have that really sweet home eventually, but let's get you in a wealth position where having that sweet home isn't going to break the monthly budget.
Absolutely. So definitely, buying now is the best thing to do. Because again, we know what's happening today. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
And there's no real loss in it. I think, I forget, it's Warren Buffett. There's several investors that say, buy a home and wait. Don't wait to buy a home. Right.
Exactly. That's sage advice.
Yep.
And as we talk about, home prices increasing, as they always do, right? I mean, homes are a market, just like Wall Street and stocks are a market, right? And they all have their ups and downs. But we're still in quite a bit of an upward movement with this. And I think if you were to look at interest rate forecasts over the next year, they are forecasted to go up. Not a ton, but they are forecasted to go up around 0.5%. Well, for someone who's right on the fringe of getting into a home now, if you added 0.5% to that interest rate, or 17% in value, that might eliminate you from the home market.
Yeah.
And it's not coming backwards. So it's only going to go up from there, right? So it's kind of like, if you're on the fence, it's really an important time to sit down and strategize this, because if you sit on the fence too much longer, you might be out there for a long time.
Oh yeah. I tell people it's a shrinking home syndrome. The longer you wait, the smaller the house gets.
I like that. I like shrinking home syndrome. Yeah. You should brand that. That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Robert, thanks so much for coming to be on the Armed and Ready podcast with us. It's been on my heart to have you on the show and just share your story and stuff. And so I'm so glad we got to put it together and have you here, man, and tell your story. And hopefully there's more people out there that will, connect and find value in, what you're doing and how you're doing it. And yeah, man, just thanks so much for coming out.
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me, Jason. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome, brother. Thanks.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you have any questions about the guests on the show, please reach out to me at valoanguy.us.